Greetings. Today's talk focuses on three or more areas. The first thing for today is Tesla's stock price actually going to 400 in the short term? The second thing we cover today is the Etron from VW as well as Jag's ipace have come out. And the question that comes up is this a significant or not significant nightmare for Tesla and the Model 3 and its other offerings? And then the final thing I wanted to cover is we're looking at Elon Musk and his $25 million additional purchase of Tesla stock to sort of help the shorts over the cliff if possible. Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. I'm sort of doing some experiments here on what's best, and I think I'll try more light than less so you guys can see me. Our accompanying video that you're seeing today is some video of the new VW e-tron over my shoulder, and open to suggestions from you guys as to what we might consider as our sort of background video for our shows. I wanted to note that we generally can see your hellos, etc., as well as questions, but typically hold off until the end of the show in order to address those, in order not to mess up the video, because most of our viewers are not actually on our live show, and so you'll hear our hellos at the end. A couple other notes. One is that we are on Patreon, could really use $1 or $2 of assistance from you on a monthly basis, so would appreciate if you do that. And number two, your like is actually really important because it affects the ranking of our video relative to sort of others that are out there. The third thing I wanted to note is that you might want to hit the bell icon because it'll let you know when we've come out with something new immediately versus a delay on subscriber knowledge. So I'm kind of excited about what's happening, in terms of what's happening right now for Tesla and Elon, etc. The first item I wanted to really dive into is what's going on with the stock. As everybody saw, it hit 357 yesterday. Based on how things are going, for a bunch of reasons, I think it's going to continue to rise probably into that 380 territory, but it actually has a shot at 400, and here's why. There are a number of variables that influence every stock, including Tesla's. In the case of Tesla, one of the sort of interesting things that impacts, good morning, one of the things that impacts everything going on with the stock is something called indices. So we've talked about how hedge funds are sort of trying to get the stock to go down with bad news, etc. We've also talked about Elon's purchases, which is obviously increasing in the price incrementally based on how much he buys. But there's an interesting part that's playing into this, which is every time the stock price moves up, Tesla is part of a number of indices, and what those indices mean is that if Tesla's stock price is up, those indices are forced to buy more stock to maintain balance. So you can actually see a stock that starts to rise, continue to rise, based on sort of the indice impact on that stock price. And Tesla's, benefiting from that. I believe the next 10 days, 15 days for Tesla may be the most significant for the company of all time, because as we're confirmed at 5,000 vehicles a week, that bogey means that there are a lot of people that are confident of the revenue from those vehicles coming in on a weekly basis. And then you can sort of extrapolate that on a monthly and quarterly basis, how many vehicles are being produced. And those numbers are pretty powerful and compelling in terms of the movement of the stock price. So all that said, I expect us to have a pretty nice upward trend for the stock in the near term, and those numbers could actually get very, very high. Is it going to 400? And that was sort of the start of my quote today. The reason why I'm predicting there's some variables that push it to 400 and possibly over in the next couple of weeks is that, um, bottom line, you know, the confluence of issues going on. Number one, people are looking for fairly inexpensive stocks relative to their growth rate that they can buy. Number two, the production issues seem to have been addressed. Number three, um, you have this indice effect. And number four, and most important, is the sneaking short squeeze. So many shorts can afford to sort of hang in there as long as the stock stays in that 350, 360 range. But if the stock pops up into that 400 range, the paper losses experienced by those hedge funds are in that $5 to $6 billion range. And there are a number of hedge funds that will try to help the stock price even higher because all those covenants being broken means there's a huge amount of buying. So I think that could be the catalyst that really pushes the stock over 400, maybe even 420 or something crazy like that. Another thing that suggests that this is a real possibility is Elon Musk's purchase of $25 million worth of stock. As you know, he did an initial $10 million purchase when Tesla's stock price was at 290, and now it's at 350, and he's buying more. And I believe what this implies is that the nature of the news that he's going to be putting out is going to put upward pressure on the stock price and further bury the shorts, which might force them to capitulate, therefore influencing this $400 stock price. Um, it's an interesting sort of set of issues, but the bottom line of this whole thing is if you're a Tesla stock owner, I think you're in a great position. Don't be surprised if we see some very dramatic upward moves in the stock price that are very, very impressive. The next thing I wanted to cover today is sort of looking at VW and what's going on with the Etron as well as Jaguar's ipace. I have a trivia question for all of you that are regular Tesla viewers, watchers, etc. There's a company called Tesla that has a 300-mile-ish vehicle or above 300-mile vehicle. Several of them, 3X and S, all can get you to that range. So the trivia question today is, other than Tesla, what is the number one vehicle in terms of range behind those Teslas? And the hint is Elon Musk is involved. The answer is the original Roadster. It has 249 miles of range. And so if you look at the new e-tron at 248 miles, as well as the Jaguar at 220 miles, those are very nice SUVs that they've come out with, or cross vehicles, but they're still not equaling the range of the original Roadster of Tesla, which I think is pretty mind-blowing. So I put in there that I thought that Model 3 was a serious issue in terms of nightmares for competitors, because there's some really interesting questions that customers are dealing with. The first is, let's look at the data point in terms of customer surveys. What's been indicated is if you have a 100-mile of range, there's a 25% of the population interested sort of situation. If you have 300 miles of range, 75% of the population is interested in purchasing. So what happens if you have 220 miles of range and the price tag on those vehicles is $80,000? The answer is there'll be definite buyers, more buyers than there were if they were 100 miles. But without a supercharger network, I really don't think those cars are really competitive with Tesla as a solution, though they will sell, people will buy, but I just don't think it ends up being a large volume situation competition for Tesla at all, especially since at 35K, the low end Model 3 that comes out next year will actually have 220 miles of range, not the 310 of the long range vehicle. So basically right now we're looking at Tesla at, let's say, $65,000 for 310 miles of range, and there's an issue with people paying $70,000 for 220 miles of range when they can get it from Tesla next year for 35K. So there's some very interesting numbers here, and that's why I suggested it. I believe this is actually a nightmare for the large competitors that are into the marketplace. We can expect going forward that their competitive threats will be, more pronounced. I want to thank you guys for bringing up the whole issue of Boring Company and its win when it comes to the Chicago um, ability to build there. Um, I'm really intrigued because there are competitors to what Tesla is doing, but Tesla has the edge of being able to bring interested parties to Los Angeles to look at the test tunnel that they've built and go walk through the methodology of what they're doing. So they haven't built the vehicle that'll be doing 120 miles an hour in that tunnel yet, so we can look at that. But given everything, all the other pieces that Tesla brings together, I think it was a smart decision on the part of Chicago to go with this product. And I think that it'll get done on time, and I think there'll be a lot of happy people using it. Um, I wonder if this doesn't end up being another potential Tesla vehicle that could be built, because it would be kind of cool to see Tesla rolling electric vehicles into these circumstances and doing it in a whole bunch of other places as well. Um, I have to admit that I've generally stayed out of the SpaceX, what's going on there, but as we all know, it's been pretty impressive, and the government is doing with SpaceX at half the cost of what they would be doing at Boeing or Lockheed or other entities. So the value proposition of Elon Musk slash SpaceX is clear, and they're generating a lot of business in the process, and deservedly so. Um, the final sort of thing I wanted to cover here was to sort of look at um, Glenn, one of our viewers, typically bugs me about the fact that we don't cover the software challenges much. And sort of for this week's look at what's going on with software that we can see out in front is Ars Technica actually has a piece out that might be worth your guys' review, and it focuses on the fact that there are some severe problems being experienced right now by folks. As you've seen, one crash a week, we've kind of talked about that on numerous occasions. There's evidently, the BBC ran a test where basically there was a car in front of a Model 3, and as it moved out of the way, the car accelerated into the space and sort of hit something at the higher speeds. So I do think there are some sort of workout software bugs still going on, and hence the crashes we've seen. Another sort of back and forth item I've been having with some of my viewers is a discussion of my suggestion of 40 miles an hour as sort of the break point. I like 40 miles an hour for several reasons. Number one, um, every vehicle has a certain amount of stopping distance. So if you're able to hit the brake and you're sub 40 miles an hour and something crazy happens, I think there's a high chance that by the time that vehicle gets to a barrier or a fixed object, it'll be so slow that the damage will be minimal, if any at all, because you'll be able to stop completely. And um, I've actually been um, I've actually been sort of doing some reading and really surprised to learn that evidently there's actually a 40 mile an hour transition that vehicles or technology experiences. And what that transition is about is that um, once you go above 40 miles an hour, the things like road signs above the vehicle that are fixed are no longer uh, being acknowledged by the vehicle. It's simply focused on vehicles in front of it. So among the objects it doesn't focus on is fixed objects like on the side of the road. So hopefully everything will be worked out soon. We don't know the answer to all these questions, but I did want to sort of review the fact that there is, in fact, a challenge happening with Autopilot 2 relative to software. It hasn't been quite worked out. Tesla has a new version coming out as of August that will hopefully address these accidents that have been occurring. But it looks like if you're in your vehicle and you're operating it and there's a fixed object like a fire truck or a stalled vehicle or a police car on the side, And in particular, if that vehicle is covering up some of the white lines that are the guide points along the road, don't be surprised if there's a pull by your vehicle towards that situation. Um, there's also been a discussion of the fact that Elon Musk has set it up so that you'll be bugged a lot more uh, by the uh, by the vehicle to put your hands on the wheel, particularly if you get away from controlling the vehicles in that manner. Um, excellent question regarding test driven the vehicles. The only vehicle I have not driven, but sort of checked it out pretty aggressively, is the Model 3. I've driven the Model S, Model X, pre and post Autopilot 2 to test out both. And I will say that, all excellent driving experiences, noticeable difference in how Autopilot operates for both. And I think you'll find the experience to be excellent on both. Um, I wanted to acknowledge, thank you for Jerry and all my friends from around the world for your hellos there. I think it's exciting times for Tesla because, $10 a day in stock price increases is nice to see, and it's an affirmation of the success going forward of the firm. We're prepping for our next show on Sunday, and the topic I specifically want to dive into is I believe, China is on a $10 billion commitment to Tesla right now to facilitate the new plant, combination of gigafactory and a new production facility. But I think that $10 billion facility is actually a warm-up for a couple other vehicle manufacturing facilities there, because the pollution problem is so great and there are so many nice jobs generated. The success of that plant, I think, will result in them building more under the umbrella of Tesla. So one, we're going to be covering more of the China effect. And then two, we're going to be focused on something called marginal utility. And we're sort of entering the realm now where there's a big discussion of, will Tesla be displaced by one of the major makes sort of rolling in and taking over their market? And I believe that's not the case. And we're going to be rolling through some of that information on marginal utility of Tesla and its long-term future relative to large competitors successfully catching up, perhaps even in the battery area. At any rate, Jerry, thanks for the mention of the $50 billion in tariffs. Mr. Trump has consistently made it clear that he's in a negotiating position where he will make strong statements that don't stand for very long, because all of a sudden he'll pull back and we'll find out what the real deal is in terms of his negotiation and how that all process works. So, until I see those tariffs put in place before those negotiations occur and countries are allowed to change their positions, and so is Mr. Trump, I'm sort of skeptical of him trying to mess up businesses dramatically. Though I will say that I have heard from certain Midwestern entities that there are a lot of farmers suffering right now because of the impact of these tariffs. And I'm hopeful that, we can get to the deal-making phase rather than having the drama we've been seeing going on. So to close out here, I wanted to note I'm targeting a $400 stock price in the next couple of weeks for Tesla for the reasons I stated. Number one. Number two, there's some nice vehicles coming out from Jaguar and Audi. There should be a number of them that include the technology from both the ipace as well as the Etron at 230 or 40 miles. I really don't see it being that big a deal relative to Tesla, and especially because they don't have any supercharger facilities to go with those short ranges. So I think, that sort of covers what we were going to address today and our addressable time. I definitely look forward to any and all comments that you might want to share. Again, your like is a real big deal in terms of influencing the ranking of our videos. We also would appreciate any support on Patreon you can provide. And you might want to hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next show. And we also look forward to any comments you might have, because it influences topics we might cover going forward. Look forward to getting a chance to interact with you once again on Sunday, and thanks for joining us. Tschüss, macht's gut, German, au revoir, Alith French, Khoda Hafez, Farsi, Lahith Hebrew, Farvel, I think Dutch, but you guys have to correct me on that, and Nuff Respect, Wa Woodman, and adios to my friend, my Hispanic friends as well. Enjoy the World Cup, and I'm looking forward to some excellent soccer going on here over the next couple of weeks. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight, and hey, thanks for the suggestion of 30 minutes there, Jerry. As you noticed, there are several people have suggested I cut down the length of my show and make it faster, so thanks for the 30-minute suggestion, and we'll see if Google as well as other viewers agree with you. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks for taking time out.